Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. And as usual, I have to get my sound set here. Let me just get this up a couple notches. There we go. Yeah, that'll do it. Hope you're all doing okay. I've had a couple intense, 3 or 4 days of work. It's not over yet. I get into work mode sometimes. I have that that
Bluetooth mode.
that North American productivity animal inside me, right? I mean, I worked in corporations for 2 decades, and I enjoy being productive. I think it's something that we did in the West that is it's good at times, right? Like I don't think you should have to do it so intensely all the time, your whole life. I mean, it's a form of slavery, but it's good to push yourself once in a while. So I had several big clients to get finished up for my boss, and then I had this book editing project on the side that a buddy of mine from Canada paid me, a few $1,000s to edit and typeset and reorganize for him. I love doing that kind of work, and when I get into it, I just get into it. Like, it just becomes kind of like my meditation, if you will. So that's what I've been doing lately, and following what's going on in the world. So, you know how I always say that the Talamanca Review is a kind of spiritual or multidimensional journalism, that I see my job as trying to explain to you what's going on in the world and giving you the news from a different perspective that is, I wouldn't say outright conspiracy theory or really negative positions like, a lot of the Christians can get into. This is Satan, this is that. I can go pretty dark when I'm describing stuff. I think, anybody who's read The Light of Darkness or The Devil in Us would not find great cause to dispute the fact that I can go quite dark when I need to explain something. But I'm not an end-of-the-world kind of guy. For me, everything is process. And even if this is the end of a phase of human history, like the equivalent of the flood or something, but the flood wasn't the end of the world. It was a reseeding of the world, right, with the genetics of Noah. I don't see the world in this apocalyptic way, the way a lot of people do, including my neighbor across the way there, Shunyamurti. But he's kind of self-contradicting in some ways. In many of his podcasts, he'll say the world is ending, but he came to the same part of the world as me. Same country and the same region of that country, the Talamanca Mountains, albeit I'm on the Caribbean side, the Atlantic Ocean, and he's on the Pacific side. But we're just separated by a stretch of wilderness, and I could probably walk to his house straight through the mountains and jungle if I had a map reader. But my question for him would be, well, if the world is ending, why are you building a refuge in Costa Rica? Is it ending, or is it just being rebalanced? So you got to be careful with the language you use, but, we live in a world where you got to sell stuff. Even the gurus running ashrams got to sort of adopt that business and sales mentality that has taken over the world. It's the discourse of America has become the discourse of the world. And I don't think it's entirely positive. And I think there's a lot of negative elements to it that we don't talk enough about. But they're there. I mean, they're not too hard to see. You don't have to look too hard. Everything has got to be sold now. Nothing just is what it is. you know. And when you're selling stuff, you're sort of cultivating a narrative where you're just telling people something that you think they want to hear, because if they don't want to hear it, they're not going to buy it. Right? So I try my best to avoid that sales mentality. There's absolutely no Willy Loman in me, for those of you who are literate. And for those of you who aren't, I'll let you off the hook. That's the central character in Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. But yeah, the world is definitely being reformed right now. And what I'm going to try to do tonight is give you my usual sort of take on things, my usual sort of way of looking at the world, and that sort of stuff. Bought a pack of Chesterfields when I was in San Jose. Okay, so I'm going to try and build off a number of things, okay? One of the things I'm going to build off is the Reality is Imagination podcasts. And before we get heavily into that, what I'm going to do now is just give a kind of another chapter in that podcast, that series of podcasts. And this one is going to be on the number 5 and why 5 is such an important number, and why nobody in spirituality talks about the number 5. I mean, I guess aside from the 5-pointed star being the satanic pentagram, but I don't see it as satanic. 5 is an absolutely incredible number when you start to understand how central it is to the construction of everything down here, okay? So let's start with this. Okay, so this is drawing again from that manuscript I wrote in Taiwan 30 years ago, but it's another chapter, and I'm going to get into it a little bit more. Okay, so of the colors, or what we know to be color, okay, color, as opposed to, and actually, ironically, I'm using a bit of color in my camera tonight. So of the colors, or what we know to be color, there are 5 that stand alone. I mean, there are hundreds of colors. You go to a paint counter sometime and look at the color samples. I mean, there's hundreds of colors, but what you got to understand is about 99% of all color is just the mixing of various portions of the basic colors. Okay? Now, what do I mean by basic? I mean, it means that 5 have no beginning but themselves. Okay? It's like, you know, that old expression, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's kind of like that. You know, where did the primary colors come from? How did our reality get set up this way? Well, I'm of the belief that everything in this reality is teaching us. Okay? Everything in this reality is teaching us, and our best teacher is nature. And color is a huge part of nature. There's so many things you learn about color and nature when you live in a rainforest. Like, for example, did you know that in nature, in the colors black and red in combination, always denote death or lethality? Now, there are snakes that have black and red coloration that are not venomous, but everything in nature thinks that they are, so they get left alone. So the 5 colors that have no beginning but themselves. This is very interesting, okay? There's actually only 3, but I say there's 5. Well, I suppose you could say there's 4. Anyways, we'll get into it. So the colors that have no origin but themselves are bordered by black and white. And if you know your color theory, you know that black and white are everything and nothing where color is concerned. So black is all color in one color, and white is no color in one color. Isn't that interesting? One is everything, one is nothing. Okay? You think of that yin and yang symbol in Taoism, and you can see where this, I told you where this all came from. Oh my God, my dog's got gas. Holy cow, I don't know what he ate. Pit bulls are a very gassy dog. Whew, I'm in the small office here too. That's ripe. So you see in the yin-yang symbol, you see the black and white, and there's a little bit of white in the black and a little bit of black in the white, meaning that suggesting that nothing is absolute in itself. Now the colors between black and white, or everything and nothing, are yellow, blue, and red. And so when we get tired of grasping at the unreal, we grasp at the real. And what that means is we start to look for the objects in the subject. This is the spiritual growth of human beings. So you go back to the earlier podcasts I did on the reality of imagination. Grasping at the unreal is natural human behavior, because when you're dabbling with your imagination, part of us knows the imagination is real. Even if we're trained through the education system of our society that it isn't, that imagination is fantasy, the education system and all of the programming can't wipe out the spiritual being in the unconscious. And it's constantly pushing this information out to us. And they've done their level best in the 20th century to muddy the waters of consciousness with people like Sigmund Freud. By the way, a pedophile and a child rapist, and most of his descendants are pretty vile. He's got child rapists and child murderers in the family, right down to his great-grandchildren. Very, very disturbing bloodline, the Freud bloodline, okay? And why wouldn't it be, with everything you've learned on the Talamanca Review, okay? Why wouldn't it be? Of course it's going to be that way. Look at what he did. When you understand what Freud put into the world from a spiritual perspective, you will understand the true meaning of psychopath. Okay, he's like beyond Kissinger even, Many of you won't understand what I'm saying until you die and you're on the other side. I'm serious. But you will remember these podcasts even on the other side, when you're out of your body and you're in the other world. Okay? That's how potent the information I'm giving you is. And the moment you get there, you'll go, oh my God, why couldn't I have figured this out while I was alive? Because the veil is lifted, all the universal love comes in, and you see the world correctly for the first time since you were 5 years old. Okay? Except ye be as little children. Right? So when we become tired of grasping at the unreal, we grasp at the real. So we look for the object in imagination, the beginning of internal illumination. And that can take many forms. It can take the form of just pictures coming into your head, which help you understand the reality around you. It can work conceptually. A lot of scientists have documented it in their biographies, or confessed it to their biographers. I think the guy who discovered DNA, he couldn't understand the forming of it, the twisted ladder, and it was given to him in a dream. His unconscious gave it to him. Nikola Tesla, honestly, is got to be one of the most honest people. And, he told the truth. He said, this information is given to me. It's given to me. And he defined the source as extraterrestrial. Now, don't immediately jump to the conclusion that means people from another planet. You see, there's been a lot of language play. A lot of language. When you understand the amount of language manipulation that's gone on in the mind control of this human population, it's staggering. It's absolutely staggering. So extraterrestrial just means more than the Earth. You don't necessarily have to assign spiritual to it, like angel or demon, and you don't need to necessarily assign extraterrestrial to it, from the Pleiades, from the Andromedan constellation, or Nordics. In fact, in most instances, when I'm dealing with an object intelligence that's intersecting with my physical existence in a non-physical way, I get the message. And if the message is valid, I thank the source, and I don't maintain an open dialogue with it, and I don't even need to know what it was. I don't need to know what it was. Was it extraterrestrial? 100%. If extraterrestrial encompasses everything spiritual and planetary and galactic, then of course it was extraterrestrial. It was not of the Earth. And even if it's a disincarnate spirit that was once human, it's still extraterrestrial. It's not of the Earth, okay? Because it doesn't have a body anymore. So that's the way I use the word extraterrestrial, and I went out of my way to explain this in the Stardust Ranch, okay? So I'm going to repeat a lot, okay? Because a lot of these lines, I'm going to sound like Mesmer trying to hypnotize you, but the repetition of the lines is very important. Okay? When we become tired of grasping at the unreal, we grasp at the real. Okay? And in this manuscript I wrote, I used color as an example of the imagination trying to reset and rebalance itself in the real. Okay? So this is natural, by the way. Okay? Absolutely natural. So if there was a sixth independent color, okay, so you've got yellow, blue, red, white, and black. If there were a sixth independent color, meaning a color that has no origin but itself, okay, it would be here for us. We'd be using it in our painting. We'd be using it to mix and create new colors, okay? It would be here for us to see because creation hides nothing. There's no conspiracy here. The conspiracy is the human agencies, the secret societies that are trying to fuck up your thinking and your perception. Because when your thinking is fucked up, your perception is fucked up. It's that simple. Okay? That's the conspiracy. But the world itself, there's no conspiracy in the world. Creation hides nothing. God wants us to get it. The entire stage we live within or upon, the entire hologram, divine hologram we exist within, is meant to cultivate us into beings of light that can go back to the ocean of love and mercy. It's not meant to fool us. Nature's not here to trick us. Okay? So if there were a sixth independent color, we'd know about it, wouldn't we? Okay? All answers are right in front of us. Now, it's possible to know many, many things from this understanding. This is an example of pure contemplation. Contemplation is a mix between meditation and thinking. It's not quite thinking in letting your mind run away with something, and it's not quite pure meditation. It's somewhere in between. Okay? Contemplation is a fascinating exercise, and if it's a natural dividend of meditating. So if you meditate an hour a day, after a few years of that practice, you will start contemplating 2 or 3 hours a day. And you can contemplate anywhere. It's not the same thing as meditation. Okay? You can contemplate pushing a shopping cart through a grocery store. Okay? It's just where you allow things to just exist inside you for the purpose of, you know it's going to reveal something. You don't quite know what it is, but you keep entertaining it. That's contemplation. Okay? If all the color of the universe is in the world, excepting the shades and degrees, the infinite calculations, we can understand that the imagination is real. Okay? Now, if it were any other way, the color we imagined would bring itself into the world through the one who saw it. If there were a sixth independent color in creation, but not manifest on the earth, somebody would have imagined it by now and figured out how to manifest it on the earth. But that hasn't happened, has it? What does that tell you? There are only 5 independent colors, 5 origin colors. Okay? Red, yellow, blue, black, and white. And there is no sixth. Okay? Now, anybody who saw a sixth color in their imagination would be driven by it. It would become their mission. It would be a part of their nature to understand that nothing imagined can be denied birth in the world. And the imagination is the birth canal for new things coming into our reality. Not organic life, that's the female womb, obviously. But the imagination is a birthing channel for things that are going to be manifest in the world. And it's done very cyclically. And it's controlled on the other side. So the field of things that are available to manifest on the earth are available in certain times and epochs. And that means that they're populated into the human astral. And then certain members of the human race incarnate will go to the astral in a dream or in another modality, and they'll see it. And they'll go, holy cow, what was that? What did I see in my dream? And then they'll start to contemplate it. And then they'll start to draw it from a misunderstood thing in their imagination. They'll draw it fully into their imagination and define what it is. They'll wrap their consciousness around it. And when that happens, they'll then find a modality to bring it into the world so everybody else can experience it. Okay? I would suggest that Newton's experience and documentation of gravity is an example of this. Okay? It's not that we all weren't walking around with a misunderstanding of gravity. There weren't people running off of cliffs expecting to float before Newton wrote the law of gravity. Everybody knew gravity existed, but Newton was able to imagine it properly, and from that imaginative starting point, contemplate it properly, the apple on the head, conceptualize it properly, process it properly, and produce a theory on it that has allowed us to do many, many things. It was really the basis of modern physics, Sir Isaac Newton. He was a nutter. Read up on the guy, man. He's a real nutcase, okay? So it's part of our nature to understand that nothing imagined can be denied birth in the world. We all know it. And this is I guess you could say, the quest of the mad dreamer. And I'd say that this is a big part of what we agree to be freedom in the West. And I actually think this is something that's incredibly worth defending. Now, has our notion of freedom been perverted in the West? 100%. 100%. Okay? The freedom I'm talking about defending, a clear consciousness that can imagine properly, contemplate properly, conceptualize properly, and produce new volumes of our understanding of reality is a beneficial product of freedom. Okay? Pornhub and OnlyFans are not beneficial products of freedom, and the negative works in our society this way. Oh, you believe this, do you? And the way the negative works is like as soon as you state something to be an absolute truism, a truth, man is best free, the negative principality, and it can occupy any human consciousness, will come out and say, oh, is that so? And they'll begin to just throw spaghetti against the wall and to see what sticks to contradict the idea. And it's all relatively natural. Okay? The only thing that's unnatural is people getting stuck in this stuff who don't really understand it. They're like mice that get stuck on that sticky paper, and that's how they get killed. They asphyxiate, or they dehydrate because they can't get to water. And it's a form of a mousetrap, right? And that's what these cultural principles become. And quite frankly, that's where we're at with the Abrahamic system now. It's sticky paper. It's a mousetrap. And that's why we're all ready to kill each other over some mythical temple that animals are sacrificed in, and some dude named Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, and some dude named Yeshua, who gave his life for the world, according to the story, and peace and blessings be upon him. Okay, I don't want to disrespect these people, but I'm trying to explain a principle here. There's a lot of people caught up in the Abrahamic system now that don't really understand the Abrahamic system. The Abrahamic system is an incredibly complex metaphysical and esoteric system. Mainly just third and fourth dimension, physical and astral. It doesn't go much beyond that, okay? But it's still a very complicated system. And trying to bring people into it and giving them a limited code of instructions and setting them out in the world like loaded guns to, fire at anything that contradicts what has been tattooed onto their consciousness as the truth is an extremely dangerous thing. Okay? So this is the way the world has always been. You can almost say that this is a kind of an elemental understanding in a way. An elemental understanding. So we may say of the three colors between everything and nothing, which is black and white, that they are the three possible directions of color, and each has its own characteristic. Now, the way the Taoists contemplate it is they would take the simplest things in their environment and show you how much can be done with these things. I have the highest respect for these religious teachings. I don't think there's too much of it still alive and well in China anymore, and that's really kind of unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So if somebody were to understand color, they would know many things, okay? You might be able to say this person is purple, and the healer who's come to understand color knows what to prescribe. The farmer who knows color may know the health of his crops by their color, what they lack and what might aid them. Each of these colors can be seen by the eye because our eye has been designed to them. Okay? So first came the stage, and we're the actors upon the stage, to borrow a line from Shakespeare. So this whole hologram has been designed for us, and not to cheat us, not to deceive us. You got to get this crazy Gnostic shit out of your mind. It creates paranoia and stupidity in people, okay? But again, the man-made environment, I would say, very Gnostic. So if you want to say there's archons in the world, I'd say not really, but there's a lot of human agents representing archonic intention. You follow? Is that clear? Because that's an important point, okay? A very important point. So each of these colors can be seen by our eye because our eye has been designed to them. We've been created to accommodate color because color preceded us. And you could say that this is a step toward the small, making yourself small. Okay? You know how they always talk about ego destruction in the meditative or the contemplative systems. Destroy your ego, destroy your ego. My buddy across the mountain there, my neighbor, Shunyamurti, this is his big mantra. Destroy the ego. You know my philosophy, right? The ego should be something you can put on and take off like a wedding or a funeral suit. Okay? I wouldn't say destroy it. I wouldn't say take that wedding or funeral suit and burn it in your backyard. You might need it someday, just like your ego. The ego is not completely useless. and you cannot function in the world without one. Okay? You can't go into General Motors as an executive in their finance department in Detroit and be egoless. You know why? They want you to be aggressive. They want you to be looking at the standing pools of cash they have and say, how can you make money on this in 3 months? Because we don't need this money for 3 months. We've got 1.2 billion. I want you to call this guy, and this guy down on the trading floors of these banks in Michigan and New York, and I want you to tell them we got $1.2 billion. You got to be aggressive. You got to have an ego. Okay, so you can't really do without your ego, but putting it down. Now, understanding that color preceded us is a form of ego correction. Everything in this reality preceded us. Okay? We are the final creation. Mankind sits on top of this creation. Okay? We are the highest expression of this natural creation, the planet Earth, this realm we live within, this three-dimensional realm. We, us. And nothing speaks into this reality except through us. Now, do many things in the universe and in the solar system and in our galaxy speak into our reality here on Earth? Yeah, absolutely. But only because stupid human beings let it into their consciousness and then bring it into the world as the agent of it. Okay? Now, the reason taking steps toward the small is important is because in making ourselves smaller, we can grasp more of the real. So to understand the real, you got to get the false out of the way, and the construction of you is a falsity. The Shunyamurti and the spiritual gurus are right about this. It is. Okay, so you got to be able to get it out of the way. And in making ourselves smaller, we can grasp more of the real. So there are a lot of things that can be imagined which don't exist in the world. All right? Now I know that a lot of you are going to test my theory that there isn't a single thing that can be imagined that cannot be produced. And this is a very important thing to understand if you want to understand the Luciferian agenda on this planet. Because a lot of the Luciferian agenda is about bringing perverse imagined structures into the world. And it's to defile the template we live in. Because the Luciferian consciousness is a defilement consciousness. The satanic consciousness is a defilement consciousness. That doesn't mean that Lucifer and Satan are defilers themselves, but they are the defenders of the free will decision of an individual human being to decide to become a defiler. Satan and Lucifer will come in and defend you, and they'll make your case to God. Well, he wants to do this. Whoa, buddy. You gave him free will. You gave him free will. Is that not your rule? Okay, I'm glad we got this sorted out. Lucifer and Satan, they back you up. You go and do your shit, and when it blows up in your face, like one of those Acme bombs for Wile E. Coyote, then you go running to Lucifer and Satan, you go, help me, and they go, hold on a sec. Then they call God in, and you get your judgment, because you know what Satan and Lucifer are? They're the ultimate fucking CIs. They're God's confidential informants. They're undercover. You understand? This is what Bob and I have been trying to explain to you in The Light of Darkness and the Devil in Us. Okay? So they rat you out. Ultimately, they rat you out to God. So do the demons. They rat you out to God. Now, you see a lot of these gangsters, when they go to court, they're really angry at the undercover guy that got them, because the undercover guy did a bunch of illegal shit while with them. Maybe killed people, did drugs, all kinds of nasty shit that an undercover police officer shouldn't be doing. And the court ignores all that stuff. But the point is, God runs the whole show, okay? And Satan and Lucifer are his confidential informants, okay? I may say, as tongue-in-cheek, that this explains, and I'm not going to go into a lot of depth about this, but this explains the Jews fairly well, too, the rabbinical class in our society in the West, okay? So they want to fuck you up and then rat you out to God. And that's basically everything that's going on in the world right now. So there are many things that can be imagined which do not exist in the world. Now, of these things, what can we say? We can say that this person has seen the real. If someone says, I've seen a horse with 8 legs in my imagination, somebody else might say, well, that's very good. That's what the imagination is for. And they would tell them to continue playing. So I know that you're going to test my theory. Well, I can imagine this, Bruce, and it could never come into the world. It could never come into the world in the framework we understand the world now. Okay? So if you imagined an 8-legged horse in 1905, you would think, oh, I'm going crazy. There's no 8-legged horses in the world. Chernobyl comes along in, what was it, Russia or the Ukraine? I can't remember exactly where that meltdown was. They had 8-legged horses born. So it was part of the allowable imaginative expression in this divine hologram. And it's a perversion. It's disgusting because it doesn't have the beauty of the Creator, because it's been perverted by us humans, because the genome of the horse that birthed the mare was corrupted by radiation, which human beings affected the release of that radiation. Okay? You see how it all works? So anything that's imagined can become real. Okay? Anything that's imagined can become real. Take a little break, go get a coffee. Yeah, hey, I'm back. Back in black, as the song says. AC/DC. What the hell? So, let me just have a sip of my coffee, which I just made. And maybe a puff of my vape. I hope all of you are following what I'm saying. I mean, if you have any questions, just, you know where to put them, right? Put them on Substack, or those of you who want to call me, and we'll talk, right? And, yeah, so let's get back to this. I was going to do a political show tonight. I didn't think I was going to do Reality of Imagination Part 4, but it's like I don't even know what I'm going to do on my own podcast, you know. Yeah. Okay, so now, so the man who imagined the horse with eight legs, he saw the possibility. Okay? The man who imagined the horse with 8 legs saw the possibility. Doesn't matter if he ever sees a horse with 8 legs outside of himself. So we then have to ask the question, where did this horse come from? So is this heaven's dream? Okay? I was using very, very Taoist language back then, right? Heaven and earth, and very, very, very poetic language that I immediately gravitated toward it. I have a great, great affection for poetic language. I think I explained why in the last podcast, right? Very incidentally. Mythology and scripture were created, were a technique that was created in which imaginative structures were conjured to show you a reality. They're literally the proof of what I'm saying to you tonight about, what imagination is. I guess in the past they didn't have the robustness of language that we have now, or all of the incredible things that have come into the contemplation field in the 20th century, negative and positive. Even having the ability to contemplate a complete psychotic like Sigmund Freud is beneficial because it expands your imagination. Okay? And what I've done is I've sort of distilled this stuff to a theory of imagination. Like, you've all been using your imagination your whole lives, just the way everybody was experiencing gravity before Newton. But when you see imagination the way I'm explaining it to you, it gives you an opportunity for spiritual growth in a very tangible way. a way that you can measure and understand, a system you can use and apply to your own consciousness, your own dreams that you remember and write down, and your own visions and imaginative encounters in meditation or trance. Okay? And all of these things are extremely important. So, what would imagine a man to sit down and imagine what a horse might look like with 8 legs? But anybody who would get the dream of the horse with 8 legs would do no such thing. You know, they're literally stepping into the dream of the future, the dream of heaven, right? Let's call heaven in this the unmanifest, sitting in the astral, but it hasn't manifested in the physical yet. So a lot of psychics, they have good access to the astral. I don't recommend you develop this. I mean, yeah, I don't recommend you specifically take up the spiritual practice of developing your fourth dimensional awareness. Because if you get really good at going into the fourth dimension, you may not have sufficient spiritual force to defend yourself there. Because just like there's challenges to being physically alive, there's challenges to existing in the fourth dimension. Okay? So these dreams of heaven, they're real. There are such dreams. They don't come from the earth. They exist of themselves. And they exist because possibility exists. So again, I make the statement from the other Reality is Imagination, or the Reality of Imagination podcasts. A man dreams a woman because he must. Okay? So when men begin to form an internal concept of women, it's because we must. Because the biological impulse is to go out and breed. You understand? So I say, a man dreams a woman because he must. And heaven dreams from its base as well. And the dreams of heaven, they take seed in the imagination of man. And this is another explanation of time. The distance between the dreams of heaven and the imagination of man is one metric of time. And then the distance between the human reception of a dream of heaven and the manifestation on earth is another metric of time. And these metrics of time form what we would call, in a colloquial way, not a literal way, because I don't want to get my head bitten off here, but in a colloquial way, we could call these metrics of time the unit of astrological time. Okay? But the astrology, most people who practice astrology don't really understand it. And they speak in generalities, they don't get the specificity, like 8-legged horse, right? But it's a way of understanding what I'm explaining in the Reality of Imagination series of podcasts. It's very similar and related to them, okay? So the imagination is real. Heaven dreams into the space between itself and man, which is what? Our internal space. And man dreams into the space between himself and heaven. Now, you might then wonder which dreams this space favors. And one may wonder if they're all real. Now, of the colors, there are 5 that are real. There are 5 that cannot be destroyed if it is not our intention to destroy color itself. There are 2 boundaries and 3 inhabitants. Okay? So, what are the 3 inhabitants? Heaven and earth and man. And what are the boundaries? Everything and nothing. The law of 5. 5 senses. Sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch. 5 senses. 5 colors. Okay? 2 boundaries and 3 inhabitants. Black and white are the boundaries of color, and the 3 inhabitants are yellow, red, and blue. And when you think of the imagination within the law of 5, you've got 3 inhabitants, which are heaven and earth and man. And the boundaries are everything and nothing. Now, I think that's enough of this Reality of Imagination for tonight. And I want to take this basic understanding and spin it a little bit for you. Okay, so what happens if a human consciousness takes in a lot of stuff and allows a lot of it, these things, to gather up its energy? Okay, so a lot of the things that are put into human imagination are energy gathering devices. I would say the Bible is an energy gathering device. I'd say the same thing for the Torah, and I'd say the same thing for the Quran. They're energy gathering devices because people invest a lot of emotional energy in the imaginative templates of these scriptures. Okay, just like a battery can hold energy, right? You can look upon a human being as a kind of battery holding energy, and that energy builds up over generations, epigenetic buildup of energy. And if you understand these energies, you can predict what's going to happen with relative certainty. Relative certainty means you can state the general outcome, but not the specifics of how the outcome will be achieved. Okay? Do you realize I just explained 90% of prophecy to you? That's a bold statement I'm making. I do realize it's a bold statement, but it's true. I just explained 90% of prophecy to you, which is why I have no respect for prophecy. It's not a big deal. Okay? It's like if you understand how the energy of human beings works, it is not surprising to you now that Western society is collapsing. Now, the paranoid conspiracy theorist would say, well, we're being attacked. I would say we're being savaged, the way an elderly lion is left by the pride and the jackals and the hyenas come in and tear it apart. We're being savaged. We're not being deliberately sabotaged. Remember what I told you about Lucifer and Satan? They'll create the free will space for you to operate independent of the advice and counsel of the God within you. That's their job. They're like your lawyer. Hey, buddy, they talk to God on your behalf. Hey, buddy, you said this was free will. My buddy Bruce wants to do this. I know it's bad for him, and you know it's bad for him, but he has a free will choice. He has a free will, and he made this decision. He wants to do that. Bruce is my client, and I'm defending Bruce. The West is my client, and I'm defending the West. And God goes, yeah, you're right. I said it's a free will environment. Lucifer and Satan go, okay. And you go off and you do your mad little experiment. And the mad little experiment is pretty much what I described in The Devil in Us. It's been a mad anti-divine experiment since World War II. Now comes the time where Satan and Lucifer turn us in. And we have to pay the consequence. We have to pay the fine. So everything we've done to this divine hologram in a negative way, we now have to own. And very often these debts are paid for with, yeah, you guessed it. Yeah, you got it. Blood. You see how the whole system works? And I'm not laughing because I find this funny, but I do kind of find it funny. I have transcended it. Okay? I have transcended it. But when I was learning this stuff, lo, though I was in the valley of shadow and doubt. And it was scary to because I learned all this stuff on my own. Nobody taught it to me. It just started coming to me in my meditations. And I'm going, wow, is this how reality really works? Yeah, this is how reality really works. So, here we are. That should be enough tonight. We're going to call this the Reality of Imagination Part 4. I was going to talk about Iran and Israel tonight, but that fits into the whole imagination of reality as well. So the stored energy in the Christian consciousness matrix, the collective hive mind of the Christians, the egregore of the Christians, clever people out there will try to harvest that energy now and activate Christians controlled by the dogma of the Bible, which is an energy containment structure, like a battery. They will go in and try and release that energy now and direct it to the defense of Israel, because that's basically what Christianity was invented for. I'm not talking I'm not saying that's what the Christ said. Remember, throughout the Talamanca Review, I've always said, you want to be a Christian? Just read the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and do your very best to live the way that guy said. Don't try and back it up with prophetic calculus. Well, Isaiah said this, and it proves that Christ was the Messiah. You don't fucking know what the Messiah is. Nobody knows but the Jews. It's their fucking word. If they invent a word to describe something, and you're not part of that language structure, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, it's the Messiah. What the fuck is a Messiah? It's a Jewish word. I don't speak Jewish. I'll let the rabbis define what that word is. I better go before I get worked up. This is how it would have gone had I done the Iran-Israel podcast, but maybe tomorrow night. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review. Peace out.